Hi, I'm Louisa, and welcome to this Nature Writing for Wellbeing film in which I'm introducing a new writing pack. Details of how you can download the pack are included in the description box below. So what do you need to get started with nature writing? Well, all you need is this film, the pack itself, as well as a pen and paper, and most importantly, a willingness to want to be able to write about your own experiences in relation to nature. It doesn't matter if you have any experience with writing or you don't feel very confident about it. It doesn't even matter if you don't feel that you're very good at spelling. Those things aren't so important. What is most important is finding a way to express your voice and tell your stories in relation to nature. I think a lot of people think that writing, especially poetry, needs to be really complicated and you need to have a really big vocabulary or certain training to do it. But I believe that anyone can write and that we all have important stories to tell. So I've got a little writing activity for you to do. If you listen to the instructions and then press pause, you can have a go at writing. What I'd like you to do is go and find an object in your home that represents nature in some way. It could be a plant or a stone or a shell or anything that represents nature to you. What I'd like you to do then is pay really close attention to the object and jot down a description of the object itself. So you can describe its colour, its shape, its texture, even perhaps if it has a smell. Does the object hold any memories for you? Where did the object come from? Now hit pause and go and have a go at writing. Welcome back. How was that? Did you enjoy your go at writing? Did anything surprise you about what you wrote? What did you find in your house that you chose to write about? Perhaps it was a pebble from a beach or a shell, or perhaps it was a pine cone. The good thing about writing is you can always go back and develop what you've written and make it better. So it doesn't matter if you don't feel it's particularly good at first. If that was the first time that you've written something creatively for a while, then well done, and I hope you didn't find it too challenging, and I hope you feel confident about going on to do more writing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the course themes. So nature, place and landscape and the stories that we tell relating to the natural environment is one of the key themes. And I feel that stories that are told from rural places are often very different from those that we hear from urban areas. How do we tell our stories in relation to the natural environment? Well, it's often about humans and how we interact with the landscape around us. It's not necessarily about writing about a flower or a bee or a field or a tree, but it's about how we are and how we might be reflecting on our own lives whilst in this beautiful surroundings. I'm fascinated in stories from rural places, and I think that these stories have an added backdrop of richness and depth and beauty that we don't really see from anywhere else. Having time in nature enables us to reflect on our own lives and think about our place in the world. Another theme in the course is memories of nature. My own memories include being a teenager in Devon and walking along by rivers, swimming in rivers and the sea, spending time on the beach, having beach parties. We lived opposite some woods when I was quite young. I spent a lot of time in there with my friends. I think that when you're young, you don't necessarily appreciate the rural beauty of the space around you. I know I certainly didn't. I very much took it for granted. But as I've got older, I've become much more aware of how stunning the environment in the southwest and Dorset is. I also have memories of being with my own children and taking them for picnics and walking in fields and spending time on beaches, watching them splashing in the sea. And now as a grandmother, I've seen my own grandchildren play in the same spaces that my children played in, and that feels very special to me. What are some of your memories of being in nature? So what is nature writing? Recently, we've seen a growth in nature writing, and this includes novels, memoirs, essays, short stories and articles. I don't see myself as a nature writer per se, but I often reflect on the landscape around us in my work, in my poetry and stories. During the pandemic, it's been a very challenging time for all of us, and many people have been turning to nature as a place of solace and refuge. When you think of nature, what words come to mind? For me, I think of green, I think of wide open spaces. I think of beautiful light. I think of black skies in which you can see the stars above you. I think of flowers and bees and trees and birdsong. And I think of wind moving through, just rustling the leaves and watching them sway back and forth. I think of water, of rivers flowing, cold water over stones. I think of the sea, which is one of my favourite places to be, and the way the light reflects on the water and it glitters, and it's like lots of tiny dancing jewels just sparkling across this huge bedspread of water. I love the fact that the sea changes colour and it changes its temperament from minute to minute and hour to hour. And I love the fact that when I'm in these spaces, when I'm in nature, it enables me to feel peaceful and present and really reflect on what's going on in the world around me and what's going on in my own life. We're all products of our environment, and I think that the place we live in really shapes us. It shapes who we are, how we see the world, and this is going to be reflected in the writing that we do. What's your favourite place to spend time in nature? One of my favourite places is Monmouth Beach in Lyme Regis. And it's, if you know Lyme, it's one of the back beaches, not the main beach where the tourists tend to go on the white sand, but it's the one on the right of the Cobb Wall, and it has lots of grey pebbles and beach huts, and it feels very wild down there. When I used to live in Lyme, I'd go down there and spend time, if I felt sad, being in that space, walking along the stones, seeing those black cliffs in the distance and trees silhouetted, and just hearing the sound of the sea moving up and down the shore. It helped me to feel at peace with myself. So place inevitably shapes us, and we as humans shape place as well. In the southwest and in Dorset, the natural environment isn't often just completely isolated from humans. The fields that we see, the countryside, has been shaped by farmers and landowners. The sea is shaped by us building sea walls, taking boats out into the sea to catch fish. None of it really exists in isolation. We're very connected to the natural environment around us, and I think it's important to remember that. One of the activities in the education pack is writing about place, and I'm just going to read you the piece that's included in there and then talk a little bit about why I wrote it. So I was asked to write a short piece for this book, which is called Meet Me There, and this is published a few years ago. So I decided to write about Lyme Regis, as I lived there for 18 years, and it had a real impact on my life. I brought my children up there. It is a place where land meets sea, a place of history, of fiction, where a grey stone wall curls around the harbour like an ammonite, where dinosaurs come back to life, lift themselves up from the rock and roar, where cliffs fall, where boats are half buried in wet sand and the tide is out, where the sea is bright and glittery as glass, where curtains twitch, where gossip swells and falls like giant waves, where white seagulls circle in the sky, mocking us with their cries, a place of narrow streets, of promenades, of pastel-coloured rows of beach huts, paint battered by sea spray, a place of rust and salt. In the summer, a press of red-faced tourists on the white sand, sun umbrellas, windbreaks, smells of sun cream and fish and chips. In winter, there is nothing but the drifting ghosts of summers, rain, waves dropping pebbles on the promenade, bottles rattling in the wind. It is a place filled with memories, with tears that soaked into the sand and stones and bricks and grass. There are as many memories here as there are brown and grey pebbles on the beach, perhaps more. So when I wrote that piece, I really wanted to explore the things that were very familiar to me in that place, in Lyme Regis. And I wanted to talk about the sea and the beaches. That obviously means quite a lot. Well, to me, I spent a lot of time there. I also wanted to sort of talk about the feeling of it being a summer town and how sort of holiday towns often have a very different life in the summer as they do to the winter. And I wanted to try and capture that feeling of ghostiness when it's really empty and it can feel really bleak. But on the other hand, there's the fact that there's space to move around and you can walk over the beach without having to climb over hundreds of tourists sunbathing. And there's a beauty in that as well. So now I've got another writing activity for you to do, and this is one based on place. If you just practice free writing, which is simply writing for a certain length of time without taking your hand off the page and without overthinking about it, don't worry about what you write. You don't have to share it with anybody. It's just really a way of you to get your sort of creativity flowing. So if you think of a favourite place in nature and then write about it, beginning with the words, "It is a place where." Just write for 5 minutes. So now hit pause and go and write. Welcome back. How was that? Did anything you write surprise you? I hope you enjoyed that little activity. I'm going to read a couple of poems that are based on or inspired by the natural environment from my collection, which is called How to Wear a Skin. The first poem is called Beach Huts, and I wrote this when I went back to Paynton, where I used to live, and was working at a school as a writer in residence. I stayed there for a week, and I remember walking past the beach huts at night and seeing a woman walking and really wanting to say to her, "I used to live here, this used to be my home." I had a really strong urge to tell people that this is where I used to belong. Beach huts. Next to bone-white huts in the half-dark, where red and green lights, strung like necklaces, hang against the sky. I want to tell the woman, with the little boy who trails behind her, while she calls out "Charlie" every now and then, as though the word will reach out, wrap itself around him like rope, pull him close. I want to say, "I lived here once. I lived here. Me." This final poem is called An Afternoon in August. And I wrote this about something very simple. It was going blackberry picking with a friend, with her children and my granddaughter. And this was in Exeter, and it was a few years ago. And that day felt so special to me. We were just doing something very simple, something I used to do with my children a lot when they were little. There was something about that day that I really wanted to try and capture, just the simplicity and the beauty in it. So I wrote this poem. An afternoon in August. Although it's August, the blackberries are ripening early. So we load the children into the red wagon with a plastic pint glass each to collect the berries. We can't find any in the bramble bushes bordering the park like a lace hem, but my friend finds some in an alley, hiding under clematis. We reach for the higher ones, the children pick the ones low down. There is peace to be found in foraging for food, the way berries burst, bright juice staining your skin. The baby sits in the wagon smiling like a tiny king, parrot hat for his crown, juice staining his face as he dips his hand in and out of the cup, as though the berries are purple jewels or spun of finest gold, saying "Thank you, more." The boys eat as we pick. My girl saves hers so she can share them with her mum. Back home we sit outside. The children play in the summer house with French grey walls, each strip of decking painted in a different colour. Boys' clothes strung against the sky, checked shirts, pyjama bottoms with blue stars dancing over them. My friend sits at her garden table, face scrubbed clean and bare of makeup, chopping vegetables, talking, while the boys sneak pieces of courgette. Above our heads, a green triangle hangs suspended in the sky like a frozen kite. It's called a garden sail, as though this quiet, happy space, all plants and colour, light dappled wood, children who are kept close by, is a ship this family sails on. Thank you for watching, and do feel free to download the writing pack where there's more activities that you can do. Details of how you can submit your work to be considered for publication on the Arts Development Company website are also included in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed that short film, and I look forward to hearing from you. Happy writing!